Well, we always save the best for last because it is time for a chat with Pat.
Yes, and today we have with us Father Jerry Pokorsky. He's a priest of the Diocese of Arlington and pastor of St. Catherine of Siena Parish in Great Falls, Virginia. Father's been with us before. I just enjoy talking with him. I love his articles. But boy, I read this article and I think, oh my gosh, 8 minutes is not going to do it. I need this guy for an hour because there's so much in here. Welcome, Father. How are you today?
Well, thank you, Pat. Thanks for having me on.
Well, this was a great article. It was in the Catholic thing called Restoring Reverence for the Rule of Law. There is so much in here, Father, but you kind of start out talking about reverence and contempt for the rule of law are issues in both the church and in our country. So can you give us some insight into why you say that?
Yes. Of course, words have meaning, and
Yes.
if we misuse the words, we're going to have all sorts of difficulties. But if you take a look at how the Church reveals the mystery of Christ, it goes through the Church, through the Scriptures, tradition, and presented to us by the Magisterium. And of course, we understand Church teaching through the lens of tradition and sacred Scripture. And we have to make sure that we're using the vocabulary of the Church to understand these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, if you take a look at the way the very human way of understanding God's revelation, if you take the same kind of dynamic works with the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and laws deriving from the Constitution, and then of course you have any sort of conflicts resolved in the Supreme Court, and so on. And of course, we receive the truth. We receive the laws. We're not masters of the law.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not if we perceive ourselves as being masters of the law, then we can play all sorts of games, and we do. Even within the church, we play games sometimes when we make the mistake of thinking that we're the masters of church teaching. We're not.
Mm-hmm.
We receive, and we're supposed to be faithful to church teaching.
So, Father, I love that you mentioned vocabulary of the church because it appears over time, instead of helping people understand vocabulary, sometimes we just change it. I'm thinking of the big kind of brouhaha that happened when we went to consubstantial with the Father. People were saying, well, why are we saying that? People don't know what consubstantial means. And the same thing when we talk about disordered desires. We get people saying, well, we shouldn't use the word disordered. Why is it so important for us to help people understand the language of the church?
Well, let me give you an example. LGBTQ. Have you heard that phrase before?
I have, yes.
Well, what is gay?
Mm-hmm.
Gay is.
Yeah.
There was a gay used to be happy.
Right.
But now gay blurs the distinction between sinful inclination and a sinful act. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for example, we all have sinful inclinations,
right.
And whatever those inclinations might be, there's original sin. If we don't act on them, then it's not sinful.
Mm-hmm.
But when you use the word gay,
Mm-hmm.
then you're blurring the distinction between the inclination and the act.
Mm.
What does gay mean? It's a completely useless word from a theological or moral category.
Mm-hmm.
Another word that is I don't trust any prelate or priest or prelate who uses the word gay,
Mm-hmm.
except with quotation marks,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay.
The other is transgender. Transgender. There is no such thing as transgender. And anybody who uses that without quotation marks
Mm-hmm.
or so-called transgender, that sort of thing, it disqualifies them from being taken seriously on moral categories. So there's lots of things like that. I mean, that tiptoe around abuses of the language. Sometimes we are a little sloppy sometimes, and it's no
Sure.
big deal. But
Right.
Occasionally, we need to be precise.
Right. Especially when you're doing moral theology, precise is where you need to be. Now, one of the things that you do a nice job in here kind of lining up, like, what the issues are as far as church leadership and what the issues are as far as the rules that govern, like you said, the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, those kinds of things, and how we've kind of fallen away from it and both areas. But you also make a good point here that I want to kind of get you to tease out a little bit for us. And because you talk about the role of clergy and leadership in the church in regards to kind of the political realm, and you talk about the role of laity. And there definitely does seem to be some confusion in this. Can you kind of give us that standpoint that you put forward in the article?
Oh yes. There is a difference between, I don't know if I have it in this article or some other article, but there's a distinction between Catholic principles and the prudential judgments that are proper to the laity. So, for example, the Ten Commandments, then all of the natural law precepts that cluster around the Ten Commandments, proper venue of the Catholic Church, Catholic clergy to preach these things. But the application of these Catholic principles and moral principles belong to the laity. So it's far easier for a priest to tell you what not to do than for what you were supposed to be doing.
Got it.
In other words, the Ten Commandments pretty much tell you what not to do, with obviously exception, honor mom and dad, so on and so forth. But in confession, a priest is like an umpire, and he's saying, well, that's out of bounds. But in terms of playing the game, that's up to the laity. And the Vatican II's document on the laity is very fleshes this out very nicely. As an example, even things like immigration. There's a whole lot that can be said with immigration, and a whole lot of people can disagree with immigration policies. And good Catholics can get into heated arguments, fun heated arguments with regard to immigration. And but I think the prelates should be very, very careful. Otherwise, they're going to be ending up intruding and encroaching on the rights of the laity. And I think they've crossed the line a couple of times, to my chagrin, and I've called these sorts of things out. I'm entitled, as a citizen, I'm entitled to all sorts of political views, and I do have a lot of political views. When I walk around in the morning and exercise, we get into great political arguments. It's a lot of fun. I keep it out of the pulpit. I keep it out of the pulpit.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I think that's a very interesting thing, because people sometimes look to the church leadership to tell them what to actually do in regards to these, instead of giving them principles to think it through and guide their conscience. And that can become a real issue. Last thing I want to touch on, and just a minute or two here, Father, is what do you do and how do you decide? I know this is going to be hard to do in a minute, but whether a law is just and you should follow it or not, because that's, you brought up immigration, that certainly seems to be at the heart of a lot of this. People are saying these are unjust laws.
Well, again, when I come up with a prudential conclusion as a priest or as a layman, I'm bound by that prudential choice or that prudential conclusion, even though it might be somebody else might disagree with it. So in conscience, that is my choice. That is my conclusion in conscience. So I'm bound by that. Now, above the prudential matters, what binds in conscience, what we call the first and second principles of natural law, those are easier for us to apply and to enunciate.
Boy, Father, I could talk to you for a long time. There's so much in this article, but I would encourage people to read it at The Catholic Thing, restoring I'm kind of tongue-tied here because I'm trying to get to the beginning of the article, restoring reverence for the rule of law. Thanks, Father, so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Pat. God bless.